Hey, good morning and welcome. And it's Mark here, and welcome to the show. It's episode 6, and we're going to talk about some amazing things today. Project Firefly is the theme, and you've already had a sneak peek. We have two amazing guests, Ron and Sarah, joining us. But before we get into that, if you're new to the stream, you haven't watched before, definitely go ahead and hit the subscribe button. We're doing these shows weekly at the moment, and there's some really good content. I don't want you to miss out. So feel free to hit the subscribe, join us live and ask questions as you watch the stream and interact with the speakers. So look, we have an amazing topic today. Previous few topics have been very focused on Experience Manager. We're branching out a little and talking about something new, which is Project Firefly. Now, to join me, rather than me just talking about this, let's actually introduce our guest today. Ron, Sarah, welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Look, it's great to have you on the show, and Ron, you and I have worked together for feels like many years now. How long have you been at Adobe?
Ages. So I've been with Adobe 22 years or something. So yeah, it's insane.
22 years. Enjoyed every minute of it, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And Sarah, welcome. We've lost your audio.
What about now?
That's better.
There we go.
Oh, good.
Perfect. I was saying I'm closing in on 5 years next month. I can't wait for sabbatical.
Fantastic. Yeah, I'm sure. Well earned. So you guys are both working in the same team at the moment on Project Firefly?
Yep.
Yeah, and how did you get to this point? Like, you've obviously been doing different things. Project Firefly is kind of new. So what's your background? Tell me a little bit about what you're doing and how you got to this point.
Go ahead, Sarah.
Ron, let's start with you.
Mine is actually, it's kind of funny. Within the 5 years at Adobe, I've jumped around quite a bit. I started off as an AEM developer, and then I joined the Adobe IO team as a developer evangelist. And then after you do evangelism for a while, it's like, well, it's kind of a really natural path to go into product management. So I became a product management on IO, focusing on developer tooling and developer experience, and which is a big part of Project Firefly. So that really kind of naturally, smoothly transitioned my way into this. Ron?
Yeah, and so for me, I've had a ton of careers at Adobe. I think Mark and I first met when I was the IT manager for Asia Pacific, and
Yeah.
that was it seems like a lifetime ago.
Yeah, here in the Sydney
But
office too.
yeah, exactly. And one of my absolute favorite offices on the planet for sure. Um, and then I joined a team called Adobe at Adobe. We basically took Adobe's technology and created proof of concepts, essentially the art of the possible. So it was not based on just Experience Cloud, but it was Creative Cloud, Document Cloud, kind of mashing up to see what we could do to build the future, essentially. And now I have started the next chapter in joining the Adobe IO team. And I've done marketing, I've done evangelism and enablement. So a little bit of everything, but it's been a great place to be since a lot of new stuff.
Yeah, fantastic. And for anyone who's been to Adobe Summit and seen some of the cool interactions on the Adobe stands, Ron, you're normally behind that, and I know you like to get out and like just actually make things with your hands, like cut up bits of wood and get
Yes.
IoT happening and call
Yeah.
Adobe Runtime from a what do you call the wooden thing you created with the balls?
Yeah. So the rollerball game that we
Yeah,
built a couple of years ago for the Adobe IO events launch, and that was fantastic. It was probably the funnest project because I'd used my woodworking skills, and the team got to use putting Arduino into the system so it could capture events. And then integrated with Adobe IO events. Very, very cool. So that was kind of my first project working with the Adobe IO team. Very cool.
yeah, fun. Are we ready to talk about Firefly?
We could.
Yeah,
We could.
let's
Yeah.
do it. All right, so today's topic, of course, is Adobe Firefly or Project Firefly, and I'm going to hand it over to the two of you to answer the mysterious question: what is Project Firefly?
So yeah, Project Firefly. Project Firefly is really the culmination of what we've been building with Adobe IO for years now. Starting with building access to Adobe products through APIs, building our API gateway. We first opened that up, and customers were like, okay, that's great. I want to know when things happen, right? So you've given me access to control things through an API, but I want to know when things happen. So then we, a couple of years ago, launched events. So product teams publish events, and we make those available. So you can now have, when something happened, you can use the APIs to programmatically change things. And then a couple of years ago, actually last summer, we launched Runtime, Adobe IO Runtime, which is our serverless technology. And that really completed the kind of trifecta of being able to build, cloud applications. So with Runtime and serverless, you now have this kind of orchestration.
Ryan, I think we might have lost your audio. Sarah, maybe
Just on a roll too.
Oh, there we go. You're back.
You're back.
It was really good what you said, but maybe restate it.
So essentially, those three things, right? So you've got runtime, serverless, the ability to build these actions, and then using events to inform when things happen, and then APIs to really orchestrate to operate the applications behind the scenes, right? To do what you want it to do. Bridging applications that we haven't done ourselves, right? So there's a lot of things that customers want that is on the backlog for teams to deliver. And I think what we've done with Adobe IO is make that possible for customers and partners to create those integrations without waiting for products teams to deliver that integration. And I think Firefly is really the evolution of that. And Sarah can talk about the CLI and the SDKs and the other pieces that we've put behind that to really create a broader capability.
And I think if I understand correctly, because I mean, every year there's something new coming from the IO team. I mean, it's like, what do we get this year? Oh, we get events, and we get runtime. Now we get Firefly. But I mean, there seems to be a theme where less customization of the Adobe applications within Experience Cloud or even Creative Cloud, for that matter, and more of a like a glue layer or an area where you can actually call the APIs and stitch them together in the way you need for your particular application. Is that kind of a fair summary?
Yeah, I would say it's a fair summary. Sarah, want to add to
Yeah,
that?
I think it's really about opening up an application platform, right? Allowing,
Yeah.
like that, you basically have all these Lego pieces that you can work with, and then providing a uniform developer experience, uniform like layer where all of these orchestration, all of these code, you can deploy application and build application and publish them all like through one pipeline. Instead of currently, you really have all the customers doing all kinds of different things, and everyone has like a very customized way of doing things that's a lot less transferable from one to the other.
Yeah, no, it's good. That's good. So I know you both have lined up a bit of show and tell today, and want to walk us through. So one of you want to put your hand up and start showing some cool things?
Well, so before we start showing some cool stuff, I think what I'd like to do is talk a little bit more about what we've delivered to date. And I've talked a little bit about events and APIs, and I'll give some examples as we go. So runtime is phenomenally useful at enabling our customers and partners to build these integrations with products that don't exist today. Or I'll give an example where runtime plays a great part for a customer who bought a product of ours and it has a fantastically capable UI, right? They could go in the UI and make use of what they need to, but this particular bank, Bank of America, they created these personalization. They're using Adobe Target's personalization capability, and they have such a very mature, I guess, way that they do segmentation, and the way that they do a lot of the specific groups of people that they're targeting for these different communications, and they change these pretty rapidly. That actually going in the UI was a bit of a challenge. So they use runtime and the Target API to build an action that goes out and looks at all of the offers that they have and pulls them into Target programmatically, so that they don't have to go into the UI. And I think that's a great example of a way that not every customer is going to do this. So out of the box, doesn't make sense to put that in the product. But having the capability through APIs and runtime really makes that possible. Yeah. So I think on a base level where runtime provides that integration, we looked at what could we do to build on that. And I think Firefly, this idea of a custom application, we have a number of customers that want to build full UI, right? And
Yeah.
runtime is great, being serverless at building a microservice, right? Building something that's behind the scenes that you're not, that doesn't necessarily have a UI. And actually, that Bank of America case is a fantastic example of where that would be a perfect Firefly app. If we had that a year ago when Bank of America, was going with runtime, we would have pointed them to Firefly so they could have a UI for their folks. Yeah, so with custom UI, I think what we're building with Firefly is the ability to create an application that actually, let me show you what this looks like.
Yeah.
So if you want to jump over to my share, there you go. So what we're seeing right now is Adobe Experience Cloud. And you've got all the apps that I'm in our demo org. You've got all the apps that I have access to as part of this org. And we have this new button called Project Firefly Apps. And when you click this, it gives you access to the applications that have been published to this org. One of the things that when we talk to customers that they have a little bit of a challenge with is building applications for their employees that is easy to do, that also allows them to manage the authentication so that they don't have to build yet another system. And I think with Project Firefly, what we wanted to do is offer our customers to build applications on our infrastructure using the authentication that they already use with Adobe Experience Cloud, so that essentially it reduces the amount of the load, the cognitive load on employees, marketers that are going into these apps. So it's the same place, and the UI is built with Spectrum. We've open source our Spectrum UI components that are the exact same UI components that are used by Adobe Target, Adobe AEM. So developers and partners can build these applications that look seamless. And this is a dashboard, and Sarah will show a little bit about how this is built. She's got a demo coming up. Currently doesn't have any data in it, but the idea is that if the website, if I clicked on the website, the news website that this was linked to, this would show me live clicks by customers, and it's being essentially aggregated through Adobe Experience Platform. And you would see, you go through into categories, you could dive into those, top articles, etc. And again, I apologize, a little bare at the moment.
That's awesome, and I really like the way that it looks and feels like a part of the Experience Cloud. So if you're, onboarding new users who are used to like Target or the different UIs, you can pop them over to this. They don't have to re-log in, and it's actually looks like it's available like within the menus. Is that true?
Yeah, I mean it is part of the user experience of the Adobe Experience Cloud. So the way that it works today, if you're a developer or customer partner that wants to try out Project Firefly, you can go to our website, adobe.io, click on the Project Firefly page, and then at the bottom of that page, you can apply to get access. And once you do that, we'll ask you for what is your org ID and your org name. And when you get those two pieces of information to us, we will onboard that org, and then you can start publishing applications. And then Sarah will show kind of how that process works. Not really the publishing piece, but just know at the end of when you build an application that you'll be able to publish those.
Yeah, fantastic.
And actually, one thing I also want to add to like the part where you're talking about this is all part of Experience Cloud. Actually, we are leveraging existing like IMS profiles as well. So IMS stands for Identity Management Services. It's basically how Adobe identifies who a person is, like what enterprise they belong to, and what kind of product they have access to. And the application is using the exact same information to determine whether or not a user should have access to this application. Like, let's say your application is using analytics data, then only users who have access to analytics should be able to see this data. And it's all using the user's own like token and authorization to access this data to ensure that there's no leakage of data, all of those. So it's really a lot more secure than when you are building your own like identification system.
And normally, like, I mean, let's face it, we always like to cut corners, and you would normally create like a service account and give that account permission, and then you just kind of hope that everyone respects the data. Whereas you're getting this for free, right? It's the fact that you can just use this and let Experience Cloud and Firefly just give the right information to the right people based on their credentials that are, and I'm assuming from a permission perspective, there's nothing new. Like I still control access within analytics or within Target, etc. And Firefly just respects that.
Yep. You're still granting access, like who can use what Target account, like who has access to Target. So it's all part of the admin console universe.
Yeah, good. So it looks familiar. It's respective of the permissions. It's integrated. I'm sold. Where do I start?
All right, Sarah, you want to jump in and show a little demo on how to get started?
Sure. Let me go ahead and share my screen. All right, let you guys see.
We can see now. Yep.
Yep.
All right, perfect. So I'm not sure, well, I presume you guys are both pretty familiar with Console. This is the new look and feel. I'm opening a project that I've already created so that I'm not sharing my credentials with the whole universe. Within this project, you can see there's something really unique to the new console, which is now we have what's called Workspaces. Each workspace essentially is kind of a container or bucket for credentials. And then within Workspaces, you can configure each workspace differently to suit different environments, to give each developer their own access. And you can add different sets of APIs in there as you like. And here I have the same setup for all three because I'm trying to build an application using platform and analytics. Those are the two APIs that I have. And I'm using runtime to basically build and deploy my application. So that's the way that I've set up all three of my environments. Any questions, thoughts, comments?
No, it's good, and I mean, I'm assuming there's quite a few people out there already using the Adobe Console or the IO Console, and there were some updates a few months ago now, so a few things changed. So this is the same console, we just added more goodness to it, correct?
Exactly.
Yeah, good.
A lot more usability. Like it took the console team a lot of time to really look at this from like how in the past, if you've used console, it's very integration focused, right? Like how do I give you a credential? In the whole redesign, the console team really took into account like application, like how do we think about all of this from an application, from a project perspective? What is everything they need inside a project to make sure that people can work in that manner instead of like having individual credentials in the forms of integrations.
Yeah, and just a reminder that the console is not tied to Firefly. It's really across all of the Adobe. It's from a developer perspective, correct? It's like the gateway.
Yep. It's the one destination for anyone who wants to integrate with anything Adobe. You come to Console to get your credentials, to set up your project. If you're working with Creative Cloud, this is also where people publish their extensions. It's a really comprehensive portal for all the developer capabilities within Adobe.
Fantastic. I like it.
All right. Perfect. I'll share that with our console team. So now that I have this project, I'm actually going to go ahead and move over to my command line to show you how I'm going to use this project to kickstart an application. So one of the pieces that Ron actually mentioned this earlier, but we didn't go in deeper, is some of the like developer tooling that we've also developed kind of in company to Project Firefly. A big part of that is our CLI. So can you guys see my terminal okay?
We can.
Yep.
Perfect. I hope this is big enough for you guys. So Adobe IO CLI can be installed and downloaded through NPM. So if you just do NPM install at adobe/AIO-CLI, that will get you the Adobe IO CLI. This CLI has a number of capabilities. It allows you to interact with console. It allows you to bootstrap applications, to work with events. And also, for some of you, like there are also a lot of Adobe products that are building plugins that can be hooked into the Adobe IO CLI so that you can also use additional functionalities, one of which is the Cloud Manager plugin. So once you have the CLI itself is basically, think of it as like a core CLI, and then each plugin are individual pieces that you can install or uninstall based on what kind of product you're working with. You can install the Cloud Manager plugin to actually work with Cloud Manager from the command line as well if you need.
Yeah, so it's the CLI equivalent to console. Again, it's all of Adobe in the one place, and teams are actively putting extra capability in there. As you mentioned, the Cloud Manager team can get access to all the AIM environments and query their status, etc. I will pause for just a second. There are a whole bunch of people online watching this, and we're getting a few thumbs up, which is great. But if you are watching and want to ask a question, feel free to type it in, and Ron and Sarah will do their best to answer it. And if not, we can always get back to you. But back to you, Sarah.
Perfect. All right, so here we have an app plugin. This app plugin is really all the capabilities that you need to work with Project Firefly. So let's do AIO. Actually, let me go to my desktop first. I'm always nervous when I'm typing in front of a crowd. I feel like I'm going to be judged for my spelling. All right, we're going to start an application called Hello World. So one thing that I did beforehand is that I've already logged in through my CLI. And then as I'm initializing a new project, it's now asking me to select organizations. Sorry about all the no warnings. It's a local configuration thing. So then, similar to how I would work in Console, I can actually initialize my local project, using existing credentials. So here you can see I am in the Adobe IO Dev org, and I'm in Project Luma. So I'm actually going to search for this in my CLI as I'm getting started. All right. You can search, you can just type in to search through the organizations, through the options that you have if you're like me who have like 20 organizations. So let's go into the dev org, and then it starts looking for all the projects I have in there. Project Luma. And then you can see these are the 3 workspaces that I have set up. I have production, stage, and SAXU dev. I'm actually going to use my dev one for now, because the production workspace is the one that's quite special. That's actually the workspace where you will publish your application into, so that it can be used later in Experience Cloud. The one that you're accessing inside Experience Cloud once the application is published is the one deployed into production. So then I'm going to be prompted to answer a few questions. By default, you can include all these different components as part of your project. There are runtime actions. There are actions that helps you work with events. There are web assets. So if you want your application to have UI, and there's CI/CD, which are GitHub actions that you can actually use as part of your project. I'm going to select them all so that I can walk you through all of this in the code. All right, so as you can see, because my project has analytics and experience platform, I'm prompted to create sample actions with these APIs. I'm going to choose the default name. So right now it's asking me how I'd like to name my actions. I'm going to choose all the default names. And now is the process where it's building. While we wait for this, are there any questions that you have? Thoughts, comments?
So I guess just to recap, you are bootstrapping a new project to call on the APIs that you've already defined in the project. So the various services, etc. The endpoints are sitting there. Now you're actually building an app on top of it. And I'm assuming that the app you're building is basically like a boilerplate. It's just giving you all the right things, so you don't have to do all the boring, initialization tasks. Yeah?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So now I have a Hello World folder here. If I just go into it, you can see that it basically starts all the project scaffolding, like comes with the README, comes with manifest. Let's actually go into this in a bit more detail. All right. Does this look okay?
Yeah.
Perfect. So as you can see here, we're inside the Hello World folder. I just opened it up in VS Code so that we can actually look at the files generated. Here we have a manifest file. Well, just like how you normally work with Node.js, your manifest file is describing the actions that you are building. And you can actually see, these are the actions that we have, right? We have an analytics action, we have customer profile, And this basically describes how these actions will be packaged and will be built. And you will also notice a couple credentials that is hidden through a $ key. Those are actually reading through configuration. So one of the reasons why we're selecting a whole project when at the initialization phase is actually because of this file, console.json. I'm not going to open it up because it's got a lot of credentials in it. But inside that file, you essentially have all of these credentials in there that we downloaded from console that you've set up beforehand, also including things like your private key information, if we do have it on your local, including your API keys. All of those information translates into basically parameters that you can configure as part of your action.
I think, we can't understate this. I know from experience, even working with the API gateways, I spent so much time just trying to work out how do I log into Campaign and how do I authenticate to pull a profile and how do I do all these things. So I think what's really cool about this is the fact that you set up your project and then you bootstrap the project and all of that's done, right? All of the credentials, everything's all written out for you. So you can actually just get to the good stuff, which is actually using the APIs rather than, the boring stuff. So
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like I used to be an evangelist, and I think one of the biggest complaint I've heard from partners and customers over the years is that like the time it takes from like having a campaign account to actually being able to make an API call to campaign takes like super long, and it takes a lot of proprietary knowledge for them to be able to get there. So we're really trying to simplify that process to make it as easy as possible so that someone can start an application in like 10 minutes.
Yeah, it's great.
Yep. So for the same reason of code, I'm actually not going to go into the .m file, but that's also where we basically store some of these credentials, like some of these capabilities, and some of these configurations that can be used throughout your project. And we have this one file called .aio. This is basically all the non-secretive information about your project and application that can be used to facilitate the application. Within this one, I'm actually going to show you guys a little bit later, but once the AIO file is also what we use for you to switch workspaces and switch projects. So once you have the code, you can use the CLI to select a different project to deploy the same code base into a separate project, separate runtime namespace. All right, let's go into the actions folder. So that's where the meat is. I hope you guys remember that earlier we created an analytics action, a customer profile action, and a generic action. There's also a publish events action that's working with custom events. So that's a sample action that shows you how you can create a custom event and publish it. But let's take a look at analytics. So the other piece of developer tooling that we're really focused on is SDKs. We have a lot of APIs. All of them, a lot of times you have to write a lot of code if you actually want to talk directly with an API. For that exact reason, we try to basically abstract it by building an API around it. And here we have the Adobe IO SDK. Particularly, you can see that it's loaded. These are all NPM package modules, so it's quite easy for you to load them into your code. And you can see that we initialize an analytics instance, and we can easily make calls we can create analytics client with default parameters like what's your company ID, what's the API key, what's the token, and then share a sample code using that SDK on how you can work with the analytics API. Similar with customer profile. So this is the customer profile API that's part of Experience Platform. Also a sample action that shows you how to use the API to work, how to use the SDK to work with Experience Platform customer profiles. All right, let's go into the test folder. So all of these sample actions also come with default tests. So all of these it's just a way of showing you how you can build tests and integrate it as part of your project. We have commands that essentially allows you to run all these tests and get results back through the command line easily. Last but not least, because I also selected that my project should be initialized with web assets, we have a web source folder. That's basically where all of your front end code lives. And you can see here, like Ron mentioned earlier, these are all our sample code are actually initialized using React Spectrum. That is the React implementation of the Spectrum design language. And all of these are also available on NPM, and you can use all these components to make your applications look like Adobe applications.
Yeah, and that library is now available open source, correct?
Yep. I believe the official announcement is coming in soon, but they have these are actually NPM modules that's currently out there already.
All right, so you heard it here first. It's available, and start using it. But the obvious question is going to come from people watching is like, what if I don't like React? If I want to use another framework? Obviously, there's more work to be done, but what's the story?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we've done is we've made it modular in the sense that if we've had folks say, well, okay, what if I wanted to use, like you're saying, Angular, if I wanted to use a different framework, you are welcome to do that, right? So storage is included. If you wanted to use your own storage, we make that absolutely possible, right? So we wanted to make this as flexible for our customers' needs as it could be. So everything is swappable. But by the same token, we're hoping that what we give you kind of out of the box with the pieces that we put into place makes the most sense for you to get up to speed, like Sarah said, in like 10 minutes, right? Where you can build something very quickly. So there's going to be obviously a trade-off there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really good from the componentry perspective. I mean, this is about getting things done. So those accelerators really help.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, now I guess I should have done this earlier while we were talking, but let's actually run this application.
And while we're doing that, just I guess one thing to clarify, you're mentioning actions and you're going to the web source, etc. So the actions are deployed to Adobe Runtime and they're happening server side, whereas the front end code is what you're looking at now. And again, all the wiring is done, so you don't have to worry about setting up ports and things and working out how things are all wired together. That's what's in the initial project.
Yep. Basically, the initial project shows you like how you can have build individual actions, and then how you can basically call them and connect to them from your front end code. And so AIO app run is a command to basically run your application locally.
Yep.
Actually, it's not fully locally. There's a -- local flag that runs the whole thing locally. What this command does is actually takes all the actions, deploys them to runtime based on the credentials for my project, and then it updates all the references for my front-end code to point to those remote actions, and then it's building and actually spinning up a local server to run my front-end code.
Great.
So let's go to localhost. Voila. So super simple actions, but basically you can try to invoke all of these actions, put in header and parameters to invoke this and get results. I'm not going to do it here because all of these requires credentials, and I try not to copy and paste this on live stream for that purpose. So right now you can see that this application is loaded by itself. But there's also a second URL here. If we copy paste this actually loads my application inside Experience Cloud Shell. And this also allows my application to use existing headers, so I can actually invoke actions, and this will actually use I guess that failed. But basically, it will allow you to actually use your bearer token that's part of your Experience Cloud to work with your application in real time. So you can actually debug your application against production Experience Cloud this way.
The demo gods are always there one way or another, just waiting.
Exactly. I gotta say, the biggest thing about working from home is I'm always hoping that other people using my Wi-Fi is not like streaming stuff. Like things are gonna break or things are gonna, yeah, all of those.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, just to highlight then what you were showing is that you're developing locally, but you get to use the Experience Cloud to test those environments. And again, that was part of the big change with Console, actually having awareness for dev, stage, and prods versus just everything all together. So it adds a little bit of maturity to to the enterprise workflow for developers. So good, and the testing harness is great. So you're not doing a full deployment, but you're allowing you to test credentials and real world experiences.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, so let me run one last command, and then I'm going to show you guys how to deploy a pre-built application. So let's do AIO app test. So as I mentioned before, there are these pre-built tests against all the existing sample actions. And then you can actually run them, you can add your own tests, you can modify them, and this helps you really easily generate report, and you can integrate this into part of your CI/CD pipeline so that all of the tests can actually be automated that way. All right, I'll leave the further exploration of the CLI commands to you. All of these are available on NPM, so it's super easy to install this and try this out. All the documentations are on GitHub as well. We try as much as we can to make everything, all developer toolings open source, so you can, you can look at them, you can use them, and you can contribute to them if you're feeling like a good day.
And let's talk about the I guess the last mile there. So I've built something amazing, right? And so I've used all these tools. I've built it in a few hours because the project has actually accelerated everything for me. How do I make it available to more than just me? Like, how do I get it out there to my organization?
All right, so that's the bit that let me switch over to a existing application and show you. CD into the Luma application. You can see that this folder has a very similar structure to the one that I just built with Hello World. We're actually going to switch over. So right now I'm in the dev workspace. I don't want to use this workspace. Let's switch with console. Oh. List. Console. Let's start from the org. My apologies. It looks like I'm having a little bit of error there. In that case, let me just use the workspace that I'm currently in, which is the dev workspace. So unfortunately, I won't be able to show the full publish flow, but I can show you how to deploy an existing application. So I have all the code that is inside this Luma folder. Let me overwrite. So it has the .m file and .aio file storing a different set of credential. I'm going to overwrite both of them with the console credentials that for the new project that I've just selected. And from here, we can do AIO app deploy. This is going to take a little while. It looks like there's something wrong with my token today, that I'm having issue both with running this on Experience Cloud and with trying to connect to console on my local machine. But hopefully this part is going to go over smoothly. So you can see with the deploy, unlike run, which is actually building your local, spinning up a local server and building your UI on your local server, this is building and deploying everything remotely. All your static files actually gets bundled up and put into a CDN that we host that can be that can be accessed and is securely connected to your actions.
Yeah, I think, Sarah, if I can add that's one of the key things. Like if you think about runtime, if you know runtime as a customer or partner, what we've added to runtime to make Firefly is storage, and these SDKs to make things a lot easier, and the React Spectrum components that. Yeah, so I guess the point is if you know runtime already, you've certainly got a massive head start on building a Firefly app.
Yeah, and so that's the deployment, and then talk to me about security and how do I make sure that only the right people can access the app? Like, what does that look like? How do I make sure another organization doesn't use my app?
Well, for one thing, I can actually give you you can you can try one of these URLs. You're actually going to see, because you're not part of the organization, it's not going to load the application for you. So my deploy application is living at this standalone destination, but let's actually open it up in Experience Cloud Shell. You can see I'm inside Experience Cloud Shell. This is my profile. I'm inside Adobe IO demo org. This is all my Experience Cloud credentials. Now, I don't have any data in the platform because there's a dev instance. I don't have any data in the platform instance I'm connected to. So all of these is showing up empty. But because I'm inside the demo org, let's say we go back to Experience Cloud and go to Firefly apps, you can see that the version that Ron just showed you guys in the Firefly apps catalog, this is the final version of the application that's actually connected to a production instance instead of the one with my dev that doesn't have any data in it.
Yeah, so they become immediately discoverable. So if you've got permission right there in the admin or the the main login for Experience Cloud, you can see Firefly apps. You can go in there, and the whole the link is there. So that's a pretty cool set of wiring as far as all of the, as I said before, all of the mundane things that just get in the way of goodness have been done, right? And there's a lot of people cheering right now, saying thank you. So that's good.
Watching out there, sorry for interrupting you, Mark. Yeah. For any partner watching out there, like you can see, basically you can easily take the same code base, switch projects for different customers, switch project for a different workspace. If I have a platform instance behind this that actually has data, then it's going to look then it's going to start pulling data using like the same connection, right? You don't actually have to redo any of those. All you need to do is switch to project and then deploy, and voila, you're going to get an application out there.
Yeah. So partners could go and build apps and then allow multiple customers to use them. Yeah. So as we wrap this up and thinking about time here, what are we seeing? What are people building?
So I'll give a couple more examples of, and then I'll have Sarah can jump in with some examples. We have, and I think you've got a link that you'll add at the end to Ensemble, one of our partners that we worked with when we were really in the early stages of what Firefly was going to be. And they built a campaign code generator. So essentially, when you want to track tracking codes or generate or manage tracking codes that campaigns are leveraging across channels, right? So you've got email campaigns or campaigns across email. You've got social campaigns, and they all have like a little URL that allow you to track those that show up in analytics. So you want a way to generate and manage those. A lot of teams are using just simple spreadsheets, but we were thinking, why not have a Firefly app where your marketing team can go in and use this? And it's not only easy for them to get in because they're, the authentication, the security is all the same as Experience Cloud, the apps they use every day, but also by adjacency to our products with API access, you can directly connect those tracking codes. So Ensemble built the ability to push codes directly into Target, right? So if you want to leverage those codes, they're already in Target. You don't have to recreate or upload them or have a developer take those codes down and update them. And we've had customers building things. Sarah, if you want to talk about the net-centric one around platform, that would be kind of cool.
Yeah, certainly. So Netcentric is one of our partners in Europe, and they actually built this really cool application demonstrating like kind of an airline administrative interface. They basically have a user-facing application, and they have a more administrative interface that is looking at like booking information, that is looking at like pulling data and generating stuff into platform. And they basically were very easily able to build this application on Project Firefly, the administrative interface, and and as a part of this, they actually created the customer profile SDK that you guys are looking at. It's open source now. Mark is going to kind of show the GitHub link at the end, and building the SDK and using it in their own application. I think it took them maybe a couple weeks to have fully functioning, both building the SDK and the application itself, to have a working POC that they are able to show customers what Project Firefly can do.
Yeah, very cool, very cool. Alrighty, well let's share a few of these links and go to some community news. So I always try and save some cool stuff to the end, and we've got a few links here that we want to share. So let me just go ahead and bring these up. The first one is a conference that's coming up in September. Now, if you haven't heard of the Adapt2 conference before, it's where the team get really deep into the weeds of the Experience Manager Foundation. So if you're familiar with Apache Sling and Felix, etc., this conference is normally in Basel, Switzerland, but this year, of course, with all the fun times we're having with the pandemic, the conference is moving online, which means more people can attend. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. So check that out. All the links will be in the show notes as well. The other one I want to call out is some of the Adobe sneaks that were shared earlier this year, and one of the reasons I'm bringing this one up is because one of our guests is the main attraction of them. So, Ron, you want to quickly talk about Project Gluestick?
Yeah, Project Gluestick really came about where, if you think about what Sarah just showed, where you have a developer involved in creating this integration and creating this application, Gluestick takes that idea to the rest of us, right? The people who are not developers, and tries to marry both the power of creating an application with Firefly and what we see on the horizon with no code or low code, where you can have a system administrator say, okay, I just really want to string together these actions, and I want to pick from a library, and I want to package that up for my customer to use. And that's really kind of where Gluestick came. Is we have all these APIs, we have events, we have runtime actions. Why don't we package them up as a library and make them remixable? So yeah, that's the idea there.
Very cool, and can't wait to see that come to life. But we'll keep seeing.
Me too.
Yeah, I bet. At some point, the world's just going to do all our work for us. So I can't wait to see what the Firefly team and the IO team keep bringing out for us. But on to the next one. So Code Labs. Sarah, I know you mentioned this one, both you and Ron.
Yeah, so this is basically, how there's some of the sample use cases that people like to build, and like some common issues that people might have. The collabs are basically step-by-step tutorials that guides you through like how do I start a project to finishing a project This guides you like step by step on different use cases, different scenarios, how to set up CI/CD, how to do different types of UI frameworks. I believe we have Spectrum one in there. So it really, and we're continuously growing this, so it's really kind of a repository for all of these different use cases and tutorials.
Yeah,
and it's also available for our customers and partners to build their own, right? So there's instructions there on if anyone wants to create one of these and make it available, they can definitely do that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Sarah, you brought up you thought this would be a good one to share the new. I think this is an extension to IO.
Exactly. So I think we kind of continuously talk about this. Like we really want to, through Project Firefly, a big part of this is we really want to start an ecosystem. And this really requires participations from hopefully all of you that's watching this. All of our tools and all of our documentation, all of our tutorials, all of these are open source. And we really encourage contributions. We encourage feedback that way. We're super active on GitHub. All of these, like the source code is out there so that we really welcome, like with all of us, we can really begin to build more and more reusable pieces that can share by all and really accelerate kind of the whole ecosystem that way.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah. And the last one is this blog post from Ensemble, and Ron, you alluded to this before, but
yeah. So Ensemble, I mean, it's a good blog post to see the perspective of one of our partners that were early with us on this journey, and what they did to build out this use case for business to employee, which is and I think that's something we haven't really come out and said on this live stream yet, which is that Firefly is really solving the business to employee use case, not the business to consumer, right? So you wouldn't see a customer like Daimler, Chrysler, or whatever creating like a car configurator that would then be used with customers. It's really for the teams that are using the Experience Cloud, so internal teams that would, I think, where we're focused today.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, unfortunately,
Man.
All good things must come to an end. Ron, Sarah, I really want to thank you for giving up some time today to join me on the live stream. Hope it's been fun.
Absolutely.
Great.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
Do you think we can get you back in the future, maybe to share some more excitement and some more development?
Yes, if you bribe me with the Stormtrooper helmet in the back, yes.
I'll see what I can do.
I don't need a bribe, but yes, all good.
Fantastic. All right, look, we're coming right up to the hour, so let's call it there. Again, everyone, thanks for watching. If you've made it this far, you must be enjoying the show, so hit the subscribe button. We have some great topics coming up in the next few weeks. Next week, we'll have the team talking about 3D workflow with 3D content within AEM and dynamic media, so definitely one to watch and come and check out. So that's it for today. Thanks, everyone. See you next time. Bye.